All right, everyone, thanks for joining one more time. This is a special episode of Frame and Focus podcast. We are not in our everyday studios, you guys can see, and we are not in a factory floor or anything like that. We are Stray Vista Studios in Ribbon Springs, Austin, Texas. And before starting, I would like to invite everyone to join and subscribe our YouTube channel and follow the podcast on Spotify. You can find us actually in iTunes, Apple Podcast, and Spotify, and all the good stuff. My name is Lester. I'm the studio director at Steel Studios, and I'm with my good friend Vinny Falico, who is the head of Black Sky Creative. And we are today with special people. We have Ace Patel, virtual production supervisor, right?
That's right.
We are with Nate Strayer, who's the CEO and owner, Stray Vista, and we are with our good friend David Walls, who is a cinematographer. Beanie?
I guess, Nate, you want to kick it off and give us a little background on how you opened this spot up and how you came to be here and how you found Ace and all the things.
Yeah, sure. So about 3-4 years ago, I was in Los Angeles filming mostly music videos, a lot of directing, and then COVID hit, and Los Angeles at the time wasn't really a place I wanted to stay during COVID. So I grew up in Michigan. I had access to some property out there that my family owns, like a couple cabins, like in the woods. So I thought it might be a good opportunity to go there and make something. So I took some crew from LA, got some people around Michigan that I grew up with that were in the film industry to come out and help during that time when nobody was doing anything because we were all locked down for COVID. And originally we were like, this is going to be a 2-week lockdown. That's what everybody was saying, right? We're going to lock down for 2 weeks and then we'll get back to it.
And even that, it was like, 2 weeks inside.
Yeah,
I don't know what we're going to do.
Crazy.
So we wrote a little short film, and then 2 weeks pass. We've shot the short film. And it's like, what if we added another scene? Because we still have time. And then we kind of did that up until we had a whole feature film. And we did this for virtually no money. We took a rough cut that we put together, pitched it to a couple different people, ended up getting a budget to finish it out, get the color, the edit, the score and everything, do all the post work. And we ended up selling it. It did, decent. The investors were asking what I want to do next. And I was thinking the whole time when I was making the feature, this is a really small scale production. We're in one location. Even if we wanted to get into other locations, it wouldn't work because COVID had everything locked down. If you want to do a hospital scene in the middle of a pandemic, you're not going to go ask a hospital that's treating patients actively all the time. Yeah. To shut down so that you can make your little movie.
Yeah.
So I started looking into this technology. I looked into The Mandalorian. Full Sail, the school I went to at the time, had just started looking into building their own volume. And I had investors ask me what I want to do next. So instead of, hey, let's make another movie that may or may not get sold, may or may not make money, I put together a business plan for something that is a little bit more stable. And a business is always going to be more stable than a movie, I think.
Yeah.
And so I put together a business plan for using this technology, mainly out of the selfish desire to use it, to be completely honest with you. And then looking into the different markets of how other people can use it and how we can help out other productions was a big Kickstarter of wanting to open this up.
That's so cool.
That's amazing. So, you were in Los Angeles at that point,
Correct,
right?
yeah.
So what made you move to Texas? Why Austin, Texas?
Yeah, it was a unique point in time because, like I said, the pandemic caused its own problems in the filmmaking world, locations being a huge one, and then crew size and just having people, being on set, there's people walking by, you can't have control over it. So a lot of people were moving towards sound stages, and at the time, sound stages, the newest, brightest, best new thing at the time was the LED volumes. So it was a unique time where the circumstances of the world lined up with the circumstances of this technology. And then I just looked at the cities that had the need for one, had a market that could support one. and whether or not that need was being fulfilled in those cities. So I looked at a couple different places, and Austin happened to line up with my personal goals, which I love this city. I don't think there's a better place to live, as well as the goal of finding a city that doesn't have this infrastructure yet to this scale, and also could use it, that needs it. So Austin seemed like a pretty good fit for all those things in a very unique time and situation that we could take advantage of.
That's awesome.
As far as the other markets you were considering, I know obviously LA is a big one, but were there any other that you were leaning towards or that had similar markets, I suppose?
Yeah, so I was leaning towards, I like Miami a lot, lifestyle-wise. I like Nashville, so I was leaning towards those two places as well. And that's actually how I got connected with View, who is now partnered with us in putting together this studio, because they were opening, at the time I was looking to open, or to get into this, they had just opened their Nashville stage. So when I was visiting Nashville, I visited that studio and saw the model that they were doing, and thought I could replicate that here in Austin independently. But again, I think anybody looking to do what we've done here at Stray Vista, or even just use a volume like this, there is a pretty big barrier to entry, because we're combining three different industries: the live entertainment industry with the hardware, the screens, the video game industry with the software, Unreal Engine, and then filmmaking. Obviously, the whole goal of this thing is to create sets, to make movies, to make magic. So finding people that can be experts in each one of those things and then also mesh with each other is extremely difficult. So the barrier to entry, at least right now, and I think it's getting easier. People are putting together better packages, but without a guy like Ace, we wouldn't have been able to do this. Without View, who has the hardware knowledge, we wouldn't have been able to open. So super grateful for the team I've been able to accumulate around me. And then just in Austin too, the filmmaking community, like all of you guys, and David shot a number of projects with us. It takes all of those things, not just somebody saying, hey, I have some money, do you want to open up a studio? Like it's going to fail immediately if that's the only thing you have.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it looks so simple, right? There's so many
moving parts. I can't even
so
imagine.
many moving parts. For real.
It's incredible.
Yeah. So Ace, tell me about it. Where were you when Nate was, thinking about this?
I think I was all over the place. No, I'm kidding. When Nate, as you mentioned, he was touring different studios to check out this tech and how far we can stretch it and what he can use and let go of. When he visited Full Sail's campus studio that I was, spearheading the whole setup and everything, he saw me working there. And at that time, we shared hey, because we knew each other during our undergrad days, and we respected each other's work and what we were doing back then. So for us, at that moment, it was just hey, long time no see. But coming back to Austin, he reached out and say, hey, just so you know that I'm putting something like this, if you're interested. When we ran into each other, I was still finishing my master's. And that's when I was setting up that studio. So I told him, I said, we got to wait till I finish, and then I can let you know. As soon as I was almost about to be done, I reached out to him and I said, what's the plan? And he explained me the plan. And as I said, I always respected what he did and the passion he had for filmmaking and the whole, seriousness about how to go by in the industry. I'm like, I can trust you and, jump into, even if it's a startup. And that's what you want to do as a leader, in a leadership position, that you want to not just grow by yourself, but you also want to put your belief in something and then grow together. So I guess that was the first step of just getting to know him when we were studying together. I think it was a catalyst in helping me make the decision of moving here. Dallas is home. That's where family is. So it was also a little bit of personal choice to stay as close as Dallas. And Austin, obviously, is an amazing city. Every time we talk about Texas, we got to talk about Austin. So, all right, it's going to be a good adventure.
That's a good time.
So that's how I ended up here. And as you mentioned, there are not many people who could run. Let's go in past. Who could run? I guess now there might be a few more in 22. So for me, it was okay, he's my friend. He's already put in money. And now he
He's
just
already got
needs
the
someone
ball
to push
rolling,
it.
and then you can just kind of
So
follow
I
it.
was like, let's do it shoulder to shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was interesting in undergrad because like we were both directors at the time,
Okay,
and
cool.
you know, like anybody who's doing your position, if it's a one-man position, right, like directing or cinematographer,
Mm-hmm.
you don't really work with other directors.
Yeah.
So we would just see each other. Like I'd be passing us down stage, just see the elephant door open. I'd look in, and Ace would be directing something, and just like, hey man. But we never really connected
Gotcha.
until
Yeah.
we finally got a point where like his passion led him to Unreal Engine and how that's evolving. I think during COVID as well, right?
Yeah, that was just like how we explored during COVID. I had the same story during lockdown. I mean, I just finished a TV show with Warner Brothers, and we went into Christmas break, and there was lockdown. So after working 6 months on that TV show, which was a hard grind, there was absolutely nothing to do. So I was kind of getting restless and uneasy. You know, like we got to find something to do. That's when I got into the this whole, ICVFX setup, but it was not out in public yet, so nobody knew about this tech. The reason why I came to know is because I was subscribed to American Cinematographer, and they had a small. I think there was a few pages of the whole discussion of what Mandalorian was doing,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of got me interested right away because I was never afraid of tech. Tech is a part of me actually.
Yeah.
So I was like, I got to look into it. But ILM and Disney could afford a volume back then. I couldn't. So for me, it was like, okay, what could I do to keep learning this, to figure out on my own? Back in the day, there were no curriculums. There were no programs. There were no tutorials because everybody was new to this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just pulled out my couple of, shitty old stands and had a green backdrop, and then used my Blackmagic camera to try and figure out live compositing, because that's what it was in back in the day,
Mhm.
live compositing for public. So once I figured out live compositing, I was like, okay, woohoo, done. And I packed everything and moved on because there was nothing else to do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when Full Sail was setting up their studio. Again, it was a door opening for me to jump back in,
Of
because
course.
unless I have money or investors who could do something like this, I can't afford.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever I learned, how many notes I made when I was just working alone in my first floor, it wouldn't help unless I have an opportunity.
And this was at the time when there weren't studios like this one, right?
Right.
If you wanted to do it, you had to be at Disney or a school that had built one. There wasn't independent
Yeah.
studios you could rent out. So
Yeah, that was for honestly for me it was the studio at Full Sail that I got a chance to
Yeah.
play with, or else I would not probably have gone too far to even be confident to tell Nate like, okay, I got you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was a pivot moment in my life into this whole Unreal Engine world.
Your actual education, what were you? Was it directing? Was that your focus?
It's actually
Or-
funny. When I started filmmaking, I was coming with like 12 years of visual artistry as a photographer. Like, I've lived in many countries. I've visited even more countries and just shot. So when I jumped into motion pictures, my focus was only camera world. I wanted to either light or I wanted to be a DP, but not as a shortcut, grow from level to level,
Mhm.
Yeah.
as you would imagine. But during my undergrad at Full Sail, you have to direct something or you have to do something for your class. That's
Mhm.
that's the game, right? And nobody would want to direct in my class, so I ended up directing a project, and that's when some of my faculty, they called me and they said like, we understand you don't want to do this and you just want to focus on camera, but you should know as a feedback that you're a really good director. And I was like, well, okay, if you guys are saying, I might take it seriously.
Mhm.
And I ended up directing a few more projects, and I can proudly say that I have a 100% success rate of selling everything that I directed. So that kind of got me interested, like, okay, maybe that's something for me.
Mhm.
But I soon realized as I went into the real world, when you're in school, you make your short films, you do these and you do that, everything is fine. But when you step into the real world, you realize that not everything is sunshine and rainbows. As a director, you got to prove yourself over and over to win your investors' confidence to give you big money so you can start playing. And as a non-immigrant, it would be really hard for me to even raise a penny. So I was like, yeah, it might have to wait. So I put that directing in the back burner, and then I realized that I'm not as stubborn and as tied when it comes to directing something.
Mhm.
I'm very flexible. I like to do something on a budget, and that's not how great directors think. Great directors stick to their vision and creative understanding and vocabulary. And I was very flexible. So I was like, if I'm flexible, I would rather be more happy to help someone else direct
Mhm.
and help someone achieve what they want to
Their
achieve,
goal and their
rather
vision.
than me, pretending to be a director but easily being swept off.
Mhm.
So these were all mature decisions that I took when it mattered the most. And to be honest, I'm glad I took those decisions, or else I would not be doing what I'm doing today.
And
Definitely.
tying that back to here, every single director or producer, somebody from the crew that's worked closely with Ace, has sat down in my office after the shoot and been like, Ace is a rock star. Like, keep him around.
Please keep
Myself
him.
included.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
helping people, get their vision through is what this position requires. And not only does he have the technical knowledge, but super proud to have him on my team for his collaborative knowledge as
And
well.
he's a good guy too, so that it makes everything
Yeah.
easier.
Team
So-
player. I think based on experience in our last shoot, things would have easily gone wrong in so many levels if you weren't so flexible and patient with all of us for
Mhm.
sure.
That's the thing. I mean, filmmaking itself is a tough process. Not everybody can make a film, and films are also not films or commercials in your case, or music videos, or whatever you want to call
Yeah.
it. If they were made on paper, everybody would make it,
Yeah.
right? You can prepare everything on the paper, come on the day, but whatever you do happens with a solid teamwork and trust in each other. And that's what we here at Stray Vista do. Like, when you come and shoot here, one, you got to trust us. Second, you got to work with us as a team, shoulder
Mhm.
to shoulder, or else this is not going to come to fruition.
Yeah.
We just apply the same thing. It's pretty simple if you think it that way. Like, it's not a rocket science,
Yeah.
but it's still really hard for others to understand.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
And more when it comes to something new like this, right? Like new
Mhm.
technology. And this is probably one of the next topics that I want to talk about is like for someone that is planning to have like a virtual production, they have a commercial and everything. What will be probably the first things that they need to think about or take care of before jumping into virtual production?
Yeah. Well, I think it's most important for you to ask first, like, why do you want to do virtual production?
Mm-hmm.
The answer is sometimes as simple as, well, it seems cool. And for those, like, as much as we love the business, we'll say, like, we need a better reason that this is the solution for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because we really think that this solves a lot of problems. And we also think that there are certain things that would probably be better shot on location. So for us, it's like discovery is the first thing. Is like, what is your project? What are you trying to accomplish? How is this technology going to help you? And if they don't have the answer to how is this technology going to help you, then we'll look over your project and tell you where it can help you.
Mm-hmm.
So that we're not wasting any time or
Of course.
putting anything in a final frame that looks like a way that you don't want it to look. So that's the first thing we would ask is like, what is your project and what are you hoping to accomplish?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a huge variety of things this technology can do. And I would say it's unlimited. But it also depends on how flexible you want to be with your project. So discovery is always first and foremost, like, let's just make sure it's a right fit to come in here.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
So I will be right if I say let's say I'm still pitching to a client. It will be possible for me to kind of call you guys when I'm still in the pitching process. And
Absolutely.
get you involved in that process. That way, you guys have a clearer idea of the project.
We'd prefer that unless, you've come in here a bunch of times and understand the process. But we want to be, white glove treatment for virtual production.
Mm-hmm.
So it feels like you're on set when you're here because everything's been taken care of. And to do that, it takes pre-pro. Essentially, a lot of this is taking what you'd be doing in post and putting it in pre.
Yeah.
And for, pitches, I think if it's pitched the right way, it can really help win a project, win the bid, because it allows you to do things you can't do other places. David shot with us a oneer where we took somebody from a practice room playing piano, and in the same exact shot, he all of a sudden gets transported into an opera house.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
Yeah,
you
that's
can't
great.
do that any other
Can't
way.
do that any other way.
So keeping it not only in mind of, we have this idea, we want to use virtual production to get it done, let's pitch it. It's like, think of virtual production as a whole nother tool that opens up possibilities that didn't even exist before.
Yeah.
I think to answer your question,
That too,
Um,
yeah.
to answer your question earlier about how do you decide, where do you start, involving virtual production or the idea of virtual production, I think the simple one sentence answer for it is, if you're thinking of a concept where you will need green screen or VFX, that's when you start thinking about virtual production. Let's start with basics, right?
Mhm.
Because at the end of the day, this is VFX. The only difference is it is IC VFX in camera.
Mhm.
So you get a final pixel, right? But once you start thinking about, okay, the concept is, as you mentioned, we start in this room and then we get transported to Opera House without cutting the camera. That's your concept. Now you start thinking, okay, in that case, we'll have to find solutions like maybe wipe transition to cheat the cut and all that. And that's when you start thinking about VFX options,
Mhm.
camera matching. When you start thinking about those, that's when you think about virtual production.
Yeah.
Or
It's
a
pretty
12-hour
simple.
sunset.
Right.
Weather
That's-
control.
that's also nice.
Anytime you want to be in
Batman is
control
in.
of your
Yeah.
environment.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because now I see. I'm sure this happens with all of you. You start seeing you're watching TV. You start seeing commercial, and you start studying every part of the of the then commercial. It's like you start thinking, oh, this key light and whatever. But now I'm starting to seeing a lot of car commercials.
Yes.
That that probably involve a robot arm and a virtual production.
Yeah.
Because you start seeing a sunset, a morning, and then and you don't see cuts of camera,
Mhm.
and you start seeing all angles of the car, and from sunset it switches to night,
Yeah.
and you start seeing that more commonly.
Yeah, David shot a Cadillac spot in here, and
Car never moved.
yeah,
It was literally parked right where we were, and
Yeah.
it never moved.
we did.
So,
It's
like for
amazing.
example, in that project, how much of pre-production was involved?
It depends client to client. I think that one was kind of particular. That came in late. We didn't have a lot of time. So the virtual wall helped us kind of just like pick up the slack where we didn't have the pre-production. I think from pitch to being in here was like a week.
Yeah, and
Jeez. That's quick.
Yeah.
we had car interiors, car exteriors, a nightclub, full wides of car exteriors where it's parked and she's walking around it. So like 4 different pretty crazy setups
Yeah,
all
for
done
a
in one
30-second
day
spot.
within 30 square feet of each other.
Wild.
And that's with the car battery dying.
Right.
for
That's true.
2
The car,
hours.
the car literally didn't
Really?
move because it
Yeah.
couldn't move.
Yeah. So
Wow.
we shut the production down for 2 hours because the car battery died.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Because I think like the car handler didn't make his flight or something like that. So
Yeah, things happen.
yeah.
And,
So
we made it
even
work.
with all that, we were still able to make the day because of how quickly this is to
Yeah.
change.
Yeah.
And we knew what we wanted to do, so we lit to basically go in and out of each and every shot super quick, which is another thing that's been really cool is growing with how you shoot out here. Like I shoot differently here than I shoot other places. The gaffer I work with out here a lot, Joe, he's been instrumental in helping us figure out how to do things amazingly fast. I remember we were working on a Dell job, and I don't remember who said it, but there was something in the pre-pro. It's like, if we can't get something done in like 60 seconds, like it's just rolling as it is. And so I remember Joe and I took that as like a challenge to figure out, cool, if we're getting 60 seconds, like we need to change whatever we want to be 100% what we want in 60 seconds, right? It's like an F1 team. If you got to have 2-second pit stops, what does that look like to get that done? And that's like the evolution of the pit stop, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how we approached it. Like, what can we do? And Joe and I came up with these massive rolling book lights and massive overhead soft boxes that could be moved really quickly. And I remember we got every single shot. It was like, what, 60 shots
I
a
think
day or something
I think
like
they
that?
got more than the
Jeez.
bargain.
More than
Yeah.
that. It
No,
was
the one you're talking about, if my memory serves correct, was 5 locations a day for 2 days, so 10
Yeah.
locations total.
and there was
Wow.
repeat shots for every single one that had to
Yeah.
match the previous set before. So we don't have any more because we pulled it up, but I think there was like 200 dolly marks on the floor. And we had our DIT Jason, who was like, they were measuring camera height, pitch, just focal lengths, everything. So then we went to the next shot, we would go back to the dolly marks, measure, put the dolly back, and recreate the same shot on the next scene. And we had to be able just to do all of those super quick, and it was a wild day. Actually, that was one of the most fun shoots. That was a lot of fun. I think it's one of those things when you get challenged to do stuff like that, kind of like, you know, like the finals of like a basketball game. It's like when you pull it off and you win, you're just like, wow.
Yeah.
We made it, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How else are you going to get 10 locations in 2 days?
Yeah,
It's impossible. There's no way.
And one of the other benefits that I'm sure you can speak on to would be matching the shots would not have been easier if you were just trying to match a green screen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it made it easier because now you could see what the camera frame is seeing as a complete frame. So it was much easier to light and match the shot in a limited time that he's mentioning.
Oh yeah.
And the products themselves have glass and
Right.
like reflections.
Oh, yeah.
and, like, it just, green screen wasn't an option.
Yeah. And the possibilities are kind of endless. I think that's what is cool about this is from the first time you shoot on it to like the 100 times you shoot on it, you're constantly learning because there's never something that you can't figure out further than what you were doing. I think my first time out here, it was kind of wild because we didn't use it to its full ability at all. Right. And I think we knew that coming out here. We were just going to shoot a music video. It was like, cool, let's animate some chomping mouths. The song's called Veneers.
I saw that video.
I mean, he was like dancing around some like fake veneer teeth and pretty simple, like basic concept. It was just plates, you know, and so that was my introduction to it. And I was like, okay, cool. That was wild. I remember coming out of here and you like had to go out, stand outside and look. You were so immersed. You kind of forget where you are, that you're not in some void of like chomping mouths. Like it was, you know, and then the next time we pushed it further and further and further until the most recent one we did in here was, in my opinion, the first time I got to use it in like a way that was just like kind of mind-blowing for me to do, because we essentially went outside, we shot a scene, we had the actors walk out, shot the plate, and within 20 minutes we're in here. That plate was graded live on the wall. We put the actors back in and we color matched and lit the scene to be identical so that basically you could hop right back into that film and not tell that we had gone from outside to inside. And that was the whole point of the commercial.
Wow.
It was to really sell, you know, it's like
Coming
it was,
soon.
Yeah, coming soon. Can't give too much of it away, but
All right.
but being able to, I don't know if we could have done that 3-4 months ago. I don't know if Joe and I were there. I think the repetition and the reps of being out here and pushing this technology further and further and further and growing our mindset of what you can do, that for me was the culmination of us like understanding how to do it right, and not second guessing whether you could or couldn't.
The funny thing about that project was Joe took a still of one of the times where we took all the negative away, and it looked better than it did outside. But because we had to match outside, we had to have these huge bounces here that bounced light back in,
Filled it in,
and it didn't look as cinematic as it did when we took those out. And it's like, oh, if we did the whole thing in here and didn't have to match outside, it would have
we'd
looked
actually have a little bit more shape on everyone's face. And
Which is the other thing that's kind of cool, is that you can virtually G&E. If you know, for an instance, right? I remember once you were out here and I needed to get a bounce board in, and I was calling for one, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh, woo, there was. I'm looking around and nobody has a bounce board in, and Ace
just threw up
basically given me a white block right where I wanted one, and it was doing exactly that. It was just fill.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
That is so cool.
Right.
Ace, do you want to talk about a little bit more of like just the technology in general? Like obviously this isn't just a plate. I mean, it is, but the possibilities of light and objects moving around, you know, this looks just like a static image, but obviously all of these objects now are mobile in what you can do with that as far as flexibility goes.
These are definitely all mobile assets, as you mentioned, like you can move around in this 3D space. However, it does look like it's just a, you know, flat image because we don't have live tracking going on at this point, but we are still sitting in a 3D scene. And if you want, I can move move that chair, move that desk, move the monitor. Matter of fact, I can change the picture, like the background on that monitor. If you don't like
You
lightning,
have control of everything.
yes, if you're frightened with the lightning, I can put a daffodil on that on a spring morning, right? If that helps. Everything is modular, and I built this scene from scratch for one of the Still Studios commercial, and the reason why we opted for this option was because, I was given the references of what kind of mood and feel the commercial wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, why do people choose to go 3D route is because you can have exactly what you want, and that's a dream for any director, right? Or any brand, commercials, whatever you name it, right? How often the commercials or any production have a budget to go to New York and find a loft like this, an industrial looking office, and shoot there for a day or two in the budget that you generally have?
Mm-hmm.
Because when it's a pitching process, you're always fighting. You're fighting for that $1,000 difference.
Yeah.
And you would wish that, I would have saved that and probably awarded the commercial.
Yeah.
So what we try to do here is we understand their process, we respect their process, and we want to give the creative the idea what they had in their mind and bring it on the screen. So when the cameras roll, you get exactly what you thought of. Now the question is, okay, then in that case, can't we just have a picture after the scene is designed and shoot that way? Well, you could. But imagine a DP like David, who is very picky about the lighting and the feel of the shot, and he doesn't like the way the sunlight is hitting that desk, and he would be like, I don't like it. It's super cool to look at, but my camera doesn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
What can be done? I can move the sun and not have the light hit it, right? Now, imagine you already spending $100,000 booking that New York space, and the sun is hitting at the right time, at the right moment, where you can't move the sun.
Oh,
right?
that happens to us. We had a project in New York, and we were filming at a 84th space,
Right.
And we had so many issues because on the pictures were very deceiving. The space was probably smaller than the pictures were showing.
Yeah.
So we couldn't go to scout the location. We did it a day before of production, so we were booked and everything.
Right.
So we have to cover last minute, like 9 feet windows with grapes and stuff. But
How many people have that same story?
Yeah,
I just got back from
Why didn't you
shoot
just
in DC.
move the sun?
You should have called Ace.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. We went to DC and had the same problem. They sent us. We were building a set that fell through. The set designer couldn't get stuff done in time. It was a last minute thing. We're like, cool. They sent us this like huge suite hotel room, and I was like, this is perfect.
Yeah.
And we were gonna set dress that to look like our set. Get there, it's not. Doesn't look like the pictures at all.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like the back wall has huge vents on it, and they're air conditioning vents. That's where our mics need to go, and that was going to be our like fireplace centerpiece. You can't cover up the air ducts, so it's just like, what are we going to do? So we had to problem solve for an entire day, and we had to stay there an extra day and waste all this money versus.
Wow. Yeah.
It's like, I don't want the AC vent. You're like, click, delete, and problem
solve. Oh
solved.
yeah. Well, let's move the sun.
Yeah.
Especially for talk show stuff too, right? I mean, when you're sitting and having a conversation, this is just whatever you want it to. It's just that digital projection behind you, which is
also the fact, like for cinematic purpose, right? When you're having a commercial or even a narrative story, you have an element in the frame as we call it mise en scène, right? Everything in the frame has to be some sort of importance, or else why is it in the frame?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's the freedom and that's the option this tech gives you, and that's why Batman looks so beautiful. Yeah. Because for each frame they could move around pieces, and for composition, for the symmetry of the frame, for a storytelling purpose. But unfortunately, it never got nominated to Oscars, so it breaks my heart. But you get the idea. Like that's the control that creatives are looking for.
If any of y'all watched The Batman with Matt Reeves
and
didn't automatically think like, what is going on with that sky, when they had the scene where he meets Catwoman on the like whatever 60th floor of the high rise, it's
damn beautiful
the wall. Like, I refuse to believe there was anybody who watched that scene for the first time and was like, how? Like, what?
Yeah.
The sky was just popping off like that
Yeah.
for however long? No way. And that was, I think, my intro to. I mean, I'd seen the Mandalorian stuff a lot, but you watched all that before people were really talking about volume work.
Yeah.
I think I finished season 1 of Mandalorian, never knew it was shot on a
Yeah.
volume.
Yeah.
And that volume was like I think a larger pixel pitch than this one. So
I
like
think that was like a
was-
360 one too, right? It was
Yeah,
like
it was-
in every direction.
yeah.
No,
That's
it was
old technology
the
now.
first the pilot episode they shot was actually smaller than this.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
Wow.
and that's why if you see the pilot, they've only been shooting linear. They could not afford to pan or go crazy on the movements
Because they only had so
because
much
it was so
space.
tight.
Yeah.
And again, they didn't know if this was gonna work.
Yeah.
But the way it blew up, the second season were like, what do you want? 360? You got 360
I mean,
capsule.
You can tell
Yeah.
in the second season they pushed it
Right, yeah.
so
Oh, yeah.
much further.
In
but
season
Yeah.
3 too.
yeah, but
And-
you still like you look at it, and I know maybe it's just me as a cinematographer, but I'm always looking at all of those tiny little details of what they're doing in that scene. And I think The Mandalorian was one of the first things I watched where I was like, it's almost too perfect. Like how did you consistently every scene, every movie I watch, I'm like, oh, there's like, we all have our like 10%. We have to be like, okay, I got it almost there, and you have to give some
Yeah,
things
yeah.
up.
Yeah.
That was the first time I watched something, and it just was perfect. Everything was perfect. Reflections in his entire shiny outfit, perfect.
Yeah.
Everything was perfect. And
That's
you're
wild.
how
Yeah.
do you do that?
One thing that I would like to talk about is practical environment as well, right?
Yeah.
Like the combination of virtual and practical assets. Because in our last experience in the Novatech project, we had 2 practical sets. Like we had to bring 2 walls, put them together, and do the art design and everything. So there's a lot of pre-production when it comes to doing that. And even if you're just using the volume, there's things that you would like to play on camera and the virtual product and the volume, right? Kind of to have that kind of parallax effect and even for the actors interacting with something that it's actually in their environment,
Yeah.
right? Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah. Well, I think like both virtual art department and art department are incredibly important to this. This is a set extension, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's no different than when they're using matte paintings, right? It's a set extension. You still have in the 10 Commandments, they still built the whole temple that Moses was in, and then behind was all matte painting. And the same artistry goes into both. So like for the virtual backgrounds, it really matters who's making these as well. Like if you go and you download some off of a marketplace, it can look fine, it can look the way it looks, but you want to make sure that whoever's building them, say if you're building a warehouse, the guy afterwards can tell you all the cool stuff he did in that. Like you see how that cardboard flaps a little bit so you can tell there's a breeze.
Mm-hmm.
You see how that forklift has a scratch on it. And then you see how those 2 shelves are too close to each other so you can tell like the forklift can't quite get through and that's why it's got a scratch on it. Like there's that artistry
Jeez,
and that
that's
care
wild.
that goes into it that you need to have back here, but you also need that person to be communicating with somebody just as passionate about the art in the real set.
So that it's congruent.
So that it's
and everything
congruent,
plays
so that it makes sense, so that all the decisions being made are a collaborative effort of not only matching, because that's just a visual thing, but the story you're trying to convey with your sets. Which all of our jobs are just to tell a story with our specific thing. You guys' job is to tell a story with the frame, with the lenses you choose, with the lighting you choose. For a director, it's the actors, it's the blocking.
Yeah.
And then for the artists that are making this and building the sets, it's what story are you telling? So not only does it have to line up so it looks real, it's got to tell that story. So finding that talent is extremely important.
Yeah, and telling to people is where all that stuff comes in too, because we were talking about watching things and seeing stuff like that, paying attention to it more. I knew what I had in Ace out here every time I come, but it's funny when you see someone do bad volume work, and I hadn't really seen it until probably 2 or 3 nights ago. I was watching a film, and I'm not going to name the film, but it was bad volume work. It was like a car scene, and you could tell I think the person just like not done, or either the tech or what was going on, but it was just like it didn't sell.
Yeah.
And maybe whoever was watching it could, but
was
I
it a
saw
lighting
it.
or reflections or what kind of gave it off?
It wasn't one thing. It was the whole just felt wrong. You know, like if like you're standing somewhere and you can feel somebody behind you. It was just the whole feeling was off. Where you're just,
I've seen commercials like that, and you can tell it's fake. It
Yeah.
totally
Yeah.
looks fake. Everything,
Yeah.
everything about it looks fake, and that ruins, all cinematography that you could have done that day.
Well, that's where it goes into this.
Lack
Like
of
having
prep
the
is-
extension,
yeah.
the planning, and the people.
Yeah.
You know, to make it come to life. Which you come out here at Stray Vista, and it's wild that just comes built in. I don't think
Yeah.
anybody who walks through the door until they leave after their first project understands like how
Yeah.
important this team is, not just this space, but the team that's here.
Oh yeah, 100%. And based on my experience, I can tell you that. I mean, you don't have idea how key was to have you and Joe and all the team behind G&E and camera department knowing how to do things like the right way, right? And I don't know how much money or you can save by having the right team with experience and just basically you worked here before. You had the experience with the Cadillac commercial. The first thing you told me when we were talking about doing this project, it was, "Oh, you're gonna need the lighting on wheels."
Yeah.
And that was so key. I was I was in the moon just by being on the virtual set, but I didn't have idea half of the work that we're gonna be doing here.
Everything needs to be on wheels here.
Yeah.
Like with
Yeah.
someone also, I think a couple times people push to not have like a Fisher, and you're just thinking in your head, no, everything needs to be able to move a lot because of how quickly. Because if you do it correctly, you can do so much in so little
yeah.
time.
Well, and as different teams come in too, you notice like the different styles. We had Google came in with a union crew that had worked on these before, and they put up one real light, and then everything else was volume.
Wow.
And the only real light was to play off of a practical, actual art piece that they had. And
Wow.
everything else was volume. So
It's the one with the dog.
yeah,
Yeah, I've seen
Yeah.
that's yeah.
yeah, because it was like a sunset, and we just put up a bunch of soft sources for them on the wall, and they had that one light that was playing off the
Gosh.
real lamp.
That's amazing.
We had
But,
one light. Well, no, we had more than one light. I take that back. See, we only had one light on the oneer, the
piano
backlight.
thing.
But we did
Yeah.
have
Very few lights.
maybe two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had one big soft source and the spotlight.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just to help
Yeah.
fill him in. But I
I-
mean,
I
most of it was
think-
shot with the backlight.
This tech was meant for efficiency. Let's be
Yeah.
honest,
Yeah.
right? One of my favorite quotes ever is, "Inconvenience is the mother of innovation." Right?
Yeah.
If you are not thinking about innovating something unless you find yourself in the corner.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what Mandalorian did. So, having said that, if you come in to shoot in a volume space thinking that volume will help you just because it is so versatile, that's
Mhm.
not how it works.
Yeah.
Even though this is a game engine, it's like games. You play around, you move stuff at will. But if you come in underprepared or sometimes not even prepared, then unfortunately you won't be able to get that many things done in a day, which this tech is capable of doing.
Yeah.
And something that I often talk to all my clients coming in saying like, hey, the first thing I need from you is some sort of storyboards. Give me an idea, where you're looking at, where your camera is looking at, where your talent is going to be, where your product is going to be. Because once I know where those angles are, the scenes can be prepared accordingly. So every time the shot changes, I can automate the project in such a way that the lighting and the placement of art and everything changes shot per shot.
Mhm.
And I don't have to do it manually. I would only do it once, save everything. At one click, all of those things will come into play, right? And then even before your camera and the G&E is ready, the wall will be ready for you to shoot.
Yeah.
So
then you can just light from
preparation,
there.
preparation is a massive thing. If you're thinking about shooting, 40 shots a day,
Yeah.
I would say sit with me for 2 days. Let's make a shot list, and I will give you 40 shots a day.
That's amazing.
It really just seems like pre-pro is everything
is.
for this.
Yeah.
It's
you know,
big.
It's like
I
It's very
think-
big.
I will say pre-production and communication between
Mhm.
departments
Mm.
because
Exactly, yeah.
there's a lot of moving parts, like you mentioned before, but not only on the camera department or just art. It's like it's a combination of all of these, departments that make one
Yeah.
successful thing, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted to talk about that because based on the experience on the Novatech project, there were so many things happening. Like we were taking care of details like, the size of the window in the wall, or even the size of the walls, which is what's the right size of the wall. And we had we had so many back and forth about it. And at the end, it was so amazing to see it, everything coming together. It's just an incredible experience. But there are things that now that I have the experience, I will communicate better in the future. That's why one important thing jumping into virtual production is working with the team that has that experience already, right? And also the communication between departments. Just kind of have a channel of communication between camera, art, and virtual set.
I mean, with all the responsibilities and everything considered, one thing I can tell you that shot with your practical set in the office and the window looking at the parking lot is one of the best shots that has come out of the studio. I can tell you that.
That was awesome.
That's cool.
You don't have idea the pleasure that it was for me to edit all that footage, because it looks incredible.
Right.
I mean, we're gonna play it on the. You guys haven't watched the final video.
No, not yet.
Oh, yeah.
David has.
Nice.
Introducing the latest and greatest in 3D printer technology. Say hello to the Necog Industries' next product, the Flowbee. The printer that does everything you already know, and then some. The Flowbee printer allows anyone to design and cast their own mold, enabling you to replicate parts with precision. Its casting system incorporates intricate pieces into the 3D printing process. You can create shells or intricate molds, incorporating materials like metal and carbon fiber into your casted pieces. The Flowbee goes even further by allowing you to embed cables and lights within the parts, opening up a world of limitless possibilities for your imagination. With the Flowbee, you can experiment with various textures of resin, including solid, flexible, solid foam, and flexible foam. Moreover, you can cast in a range of colors, as well as adjust the color itself by simply adding more dye. This device was brought to life by engineers that understand the pain points and various steps in the manufacturing industries. And when it comes to heavy-duty needs, we've got you covered. The Flowbee offers precise manipulation even after a mold is manufactured. The Flowbee allows you to do so in the casting process, even after the mold has been created. You can do more and output materials on a small or large scale, from personal art projects to massive industrial and manufacturing efforts. This is why the Flowbee comes with a self-cleaning feature, ensuring you're always ready for the next cast, no matter how messy, lengthy, intricate, or big the last casting project was. No other technology out there can match our mold and casting capabilities in a single unit. We take pride in introducing this technology to the world and placing it directly in your hands. Join the Necog Industries family. The Flowbee, a new wave of technology.
I mean,
How did this scene look? Because this was the most virtual.
This was my favorite. Like
Okay.
everybody has their personal favorites. This was my personal.
Because the only thing that was real was the desk, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
just the desk and the printer.
So we moved the date, so I wasn't able to be here during this shot. I had something going on, but I came back on set when you guys had finished this setup, when you guys were wrapping, and I was just looking at stills that David showed me, and I was like, "What's real in this one?"
Yeah, that was.
Guess.
My
You don't even know. He's
like,
like, oh man.
That was
yeah,
my
I know.
favorite.
No,
That's pretty amazing.
This scenario looks incredible, and
Oh, I can't wait to see it.
Oh yeah, it as first timer editing, virtual set and practicals and stuff. I was like, oh man, I don't know how it's gonna look, the color grading and stuff like that. But I mean, it was bread and butter together. It looks so beautiful. And
Love to
one
hear
of
that.
my favorite scenarios is also the one with the parking lot, because it looks so damn real.
Yeah.
It looks so real. It's
it looks so good that I was almost inclined to have a truck drive by. I tried a few times.
oh really?
Oh,
I
yeah,
did.
I remember
was-
seeing
I was
that
moving the truck, right? I was like, the only thing
Yeah.
we actually need in this scene is some sort of movement outside, like a car driving or a
Yeah.
truck
Or
driving.
someone walking.
I remember
Right.
sitting
Oh,
on
Or
the,
someone
the
walking,
dolly
yeah.
seat, and every once in a while, when we were not shooting, I was like, did a truck just drive by in that parking lot? And I was like, I wonder if that's on a loop or if he's trying to like set that thing off right when we're doing a take.
Yeah, you see that take on the video, and you can't even tell it's not real.
Ace, you want to talk about that a little bit as far as background action and extras and how that can kind of play into your shot?
Totally. So before we jump to background movement and animations and extras, it is worth to note the fact that this is all real-time renders. So it renders 24 frames a second, just like cameras 24 frames seconds, right? So we cannot afford to have too many things going in the background, which requires rendering every frame, because that's going to cost the performance.
Mhm.
And if the performance go down, you're not going to get 24 frames. And if you don't get 24 frames, you will see that it's glitching. It's common understanding of if you shoot at 24, but if you want to, slow it down, or, well, slowing down would work better. But if you want to speed it up at 60 frames, then you would have missing frames. Same thing happens here.
Yeah.
If you're not running at 24 frames while you're shooting, then you're going to have some glitches in the movement, whether it's trees or cars or anything. So for the whole background thing to work in your favor, it is important to list out how many things you want to have 3D movements and how many things you can get away without having 3D, right? So for example, you mentioned about extras. You can have 4 or 5 different layers of extras. The closer to the camera can be 3D, but the farther they are, the less detailed they become. In that case, you can just have a video plate playing with people walking around.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to render every frame, right? There are multiple ways to achieve that. We can get into that some other time. But the idea is to not have high fidelity graphics in the whole scene unless you're going to see that.
Mm-hmm.
And as Nate mentioned earlier, this is a set extension. So this part of the production is more often than not, it's going to be falling into your depth of field.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Blurred out, probably not even sharp enough for you to see the details, right? So the biggest thing I communicate with the artist team when they are designing sets like this is you got to understand whatever time you're spending in designing this set highly detailed, you're probably never going to see that detail unless you're going to have the rendered video clips from the engine. So as Nate mentioned earlier about the warehouse, highly detailed textures on the forklift with a scratch on it.
Mm-hmm.
That becomes a decision of a virtual production supervisor, knowing what the storyboards are, knowing what the shot's going to look like, to tell them how much time they need to spend, right? Same way, a forklift with the high fidelity modeling would have bunch of polygons to create a shape the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I would have them do that if it's going to sit right next to your practical art. So it makes sense. It looks like, okay, they blend into each other. But if it's sitting like maybe 100 feet in the background in the warehouse, then I would ask them, like, don't use 1 million polygon. Probably use about 10,000 or 50,000. So when you see the model up close, you will see that the 50,000 one is not proper shape.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, blah.
Yeah.
It's compared to the 1 million. But what it does for my system is now my system do not have to render 1 million polygons. Instead, it will only have to do 10,000, right? So that's
it just
how
leaves more processing power overall.
So consider me as a virtual production line producer. I need to think of budget, but my budget is in terms of processing.
Mm-hmm.
That is megabits.
Gotcha.
And your budget is money. So we think same way. Same thing with designing the sets. When I ask for storyboard, I'm not asking so that it's easy on me. I'm asking so that I can save production money by letting the artist know they're only going to see this way, so don't create anything this way.
Gotcha.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So 360 scenes are going to be always heavy on the computers, and then you'll be banging your head at the wall saying, why did I design 360 when I was only going this way? And then this way, which was important for you, was not even rendering 24 frames because it had to do all of that for no reason.
Yeah.
What's the difference, Ace, in that and the one world we came in, I think it was like 2 months ago, and it has the deep set extension of space, or not space, but it was like spaceships, and when Moses hit them, they
start
fly.
moving. Yeah,
They
so
start moving.
Oh yeah, I saw
So
that one.
is that like a middle ground?
no,
Or-
so that's another thing. That's a cheat that we have to apply when the scenes are so heavy and not made for virtual production. that scene, when you open that scene on ICVFX, it would open at 11 frames. There is no way you can shoot at 24 with that, right?
And
So
that's seeing everybody, right? Like
that
if
is
you were
everything.
looking at the whole
Yeah,
world,
with
everybody's
a bunch
Yeah.
of workers
Yeah.
walking around, engineers working on the spaceship and all that,
Yeah.
with sparks and particle system, everything is like going on at the same time.
Yeah.
So for the frustum to render at 24 frames a second, because again, you only care about what the camera is seeing, you don't care about everything else, right?
Yeah.
We have to freeze what's outside the frustum so that
cool.
the computers would not
That-
render anything other
So,
than
yeah.
the frustum.
So what this tech allows you to do is just prioritize the frame,
Hmm.
and nothing else matters.
Yeah.
If you still need things for reflections, we can pick and choose
Yeah,
what's
yeah.
being reflected and make sure that that's still high fidelity. But you can really decide where's your processing power going. Like he
Yeah.
said, it's a budget. So where are we putting our budget? It should all be going into the frame, not to all this other stuff
Everything
that
else.
Makes
you
total
don't
sense. So as
see.
Frustum, it's frustum, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
which
It
is
makes-
essentially is your frame.
fast.
as you
I'm
move
always
the
like
camera.
Fresdom, Thresdom.
So it's actually what a frustum is. It's the base of a pyramid. So if you imagine your camera as the tip of the pyramid, the base is
Yeah,
the
yeah.
frustum.
I mean,
It would-
it's mind blowing just to see it in
Yeah.
behind camera.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you see the camera moving, and then you see.
But
the
it's
frame.
really cool. This whole thing had millions of artifacts. I mean,
Mhm.
people grinding, welding. It looked like a Star Wars set extension.
Yeah.
And only when the frustum would hit that section would those people then start to move
Yeah,
and
it's
sparks would
crazy.
fly. And it was like zero delay, and it was kind of wild because, right, it
Yeah.
allows you to shoot that larger bit depth,
Yeah.
but it only
Yeah.
renders that.
So the
That
the
frustum.
back end of this, what we are talking about, choosing what moves and what doesn't move, is you're telling the system, you're telling the engine that you do you. We're not asking you to stop doing anything, but we are asking you to not show us what you're doing on the wall. Like in the layman's term, you don't need
Mhm.
to have a technical knowledge to understand. But what I'm saying is, I'm telling engine to not to show me what you're doing. You keep doing what you're doing, but you only show me what's in this
Right.
frustum.
Yeah.
So when that moves,
crazy.
it is already doing, but when the frustum moves, now it's showing you what it's doing.
Yeah.
And,
That's
and
amazing.
for these environments themselves, like we said earlier, Ace built this one. But Ace is also on set a lot. So we don't have time to be the artist for every single project. So we also do have partners. So we were talking about The Mandalorian. Narwhal, the studio who does all the, or some of the virtual sets for Mandalorian, is a partner of ours that we work with.
Mhm.
Halogen, shout out to them. They're the ones who made that one that we were talking about earlier. So depending on your budget, you can go from us throwing one together here, like this one, if it's as simple as this, and Ace does a phenomenal job when we have to, up to the guys who did The Mandalorian, which is another thing that you don't think about when you're building a studio like this. Well, who's going to make the backgrounds? And then those
Yeah.
relationships have to get made. You have to
Yeah.
be able to have that infrastructure as well.
And I think that's the kind of cool world that we're scratching the surface on right now, because like virtual production, in my mind, as a cinematographer, it's still super new. I mean,
Yeah.
we're using
yeah.
it a lot, but it is still really, really new.
Mhm.
And maybe I'm prematurely talking, but that's kind of what we're working on with trying to get that in more and more people's hands. So we're in the talks of doing workshops to
Mhm.
bring people in, to let more and more
Mhm.
people, because
Educate people.
right, like it's
Yeah.
one thing to come and take a tour like you did obviously before our shoot,
Yeah.
and then it's a whole other thing to come out here and be in the onslaught of a production day, because let's face it, like production days are wild,
Mhm.
and,
Oh, yeah.
and if you don't have a team that you've worked with before, which is going to happen a ton, it's a lot. So giving people the opportunity to come in and see all this happen for real is like
Yeah.
something all of us have been working on.
I think it's one of those things that people that has not the experience of virtual production yet, it's very intimidating, right? Because you see the big screen and then all the lights and everything. It's like, this is out of this world.
Yeah.
And it tends to people. I mean, I think people might think, this is like $300,000, right? But
I wish.
Investors would be happier.
yeah, but I mean, it's in that range of it's not impossible to get.
Yeah.
But also,
Well, like the
gives-
day rate.
Oh, yeah.
If you're talking about the day rate, yeah. I mean,
Oh.
if you can cut down days, then it's gonna be about what it would be to go shoot on set, because an extra day of crew for most productions is around, if not more than the cost of a day right here.
Yeah.
So if you can cut 2 days off of your production by shooting it here, you're either saving money or it costs the same.
One overtime and travel expenses.
Plus overtime,
I mean,
the
you can
things you
make,
don't think about.
Yeah, I
you
think
can make double your day rate in like a few hours of overtime,
Yeah.
right? And so
Yeah.
production's just going to lose those first. And then like, if you have to be in like Hungary and then,
all
Spain
around the world,
or
it's
somewhere
like
else.
the
I
cost
mean,
to get those people
Oh,
all
yeah.
over the place.
You know,
You know.
I
The
think-
difference is the line item costs look smaller because there's a bunch of them, and then it's like virtual production. It usually gets lumped into one cost,
Mhm.
Yeah.
but when it's broken down of all the things that you get to take out because you're shooting in virtual production, it's not as. I mean, there's still a budget range you need to be in order to do this. The same as you need to be in a certain budget range to be able to do, certain ideas.
Yeah, and I think those are things that at least as a head of a production company, you have to kind of understand. That way you can sell it to the client.
Yeah.
Because the client is the decision maker in that
Right.
aspect. So if you understand how it works, what it entails, how many people you're gonna need, how many departments are gonna be involved, it will be easier for you to sell the idea to the client and say we don't need to travel. I mean, all the budget can go into one place and get as many locations as we
It's
need.
a fix to a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And-
I think that's. I'm sorry. I think
Yeah, go
that gets really helpful when you consult a virtual production studio like us before you in your pitching process.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying involve us in the pitch or,
But just the conversation.
right, just a
overall.
a consultancy. Like, hey, I'm thinking about this concept. What are the benefits
What does this entail?
we can
and how-
get?
how
So
can we
you could
cut
include
here?
that during the pitch.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's about it, right? If you win the pitch, it doesn't matter how you shoot it,
Yeah.
as long as your concept and whatever you had in your mind has been delivered.
Yeah.
But having that one consultation can really change the game, in my opinion.
Because you guys
100%.
were what sold the Cadillac job. I mean, that and the Venice were the two. I know when they won the job, I remember the studio told us that this, not just virtual production, but this specific volume and the cameras that we were using were what won them the
Pushed
bid.
it over the top.
Yeah. That's
And-
one thing that I wanted to talk about is people as they start knowing more about virtual production, they're gonna have questions, right? And one of the questions might be, what camera should we use? Like, what lenses, what camera? I think camera is more important because that gives you the range of settings that you're gonna need to match with the volume, right? You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, in my opinion, the Sony Venice 2 was geared towards virtual production in my mind. I mean, it can shoot a lot of other things. It does shoot a lot of other things, but that was kind of the camera that gave us the most resolution and the most tools to be in here, which is why I invested in one, and which is what we shoot mostly out here. Lenses are a little bit different. I actually would like to start shooting more and more lenses out here. We've only shot on a few different sets. We've shot some anamorphic stuff. We have shot a lot on the Tokinas since I own those. But I'm kind of every time we come do something out here, it opens up this whole new world of like, I want to try this and I want to try this, and it's never ending. That's the one thing I always leave here wanting to do something different. Yeah, I mean, I think that's something I want to look into, is shooting more imperfect glass, because this is like the perfect world.
Yeah.
And we constantly make perfect things come out of here. I want to start kind of looking into the imperfect glass, old vintage glass, and shooting out here. That's just something I haven't got to do yet. And like I said, every time you leave, I always have something in my brain that I want to do next time. I always walk away from other sets where I'm like, cool, it was great.
We got what we got,
I never have any like lingering thoughts about what we could do next time. I always leave here like, what can I do next time differently? Because it leaves you.
But that's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because you can, I think the power of virtual and having the freedom to, in the practical world, you can do whatever, you can actually switch to whatever glass you had in mind, anamorphic or all those vintage lenses that give you that, I don't know, that weird background and outside the depth of field. I think, yeah.
How was shooting anamorphic overall? Did that give you any hiccups or?
No, I mean,
was it a different shooting style or?
I mean, it does come with some different things. I mean, you have to, obviously have backlight to flare the lenses, or at least get them kind of off to the side where you're leaking light into the lens to hit the sensor with it. And so we were pulling panels, kind of like we did for our oneer, and that way we could have some like harsher backlight on a few things to flare lenses. And some of the stuff we didn't want them at all. So that was a cool thing, right? Because it is kind of hard to skate around flares when you're shooting anamorphic. I think I did a one take. I think the first one I ever did in Mexico, and we shot anamorphic. And I know the director was like, I want to shoot anamorphic. I want 0 flares. And I go, what? I was
Wait,
like,
how are
okay,
we
cool.
supposed to?
Like, challenge accepted. And there were no flares.
Oh, really?
But in the real world, like, that was kind of difficult. Here it was really easy, because it's just not going to flare unless we pull and put a hard light.
Nate, I heard you guys are planning to do some workshops here at Stray Vista, right?
Yeah, as David mentioned, we're planning some workshops right now, kind of early stages, but we've done a couple in the past that were kind of more panel based, things that we recorded and you could watch and get all the value from just watching it on a video. And we really want to do a workshop where you have to be here, because I think that provides more value, because as both of you can attest, you can see pictures, you can see videos.
It's just not the same until you get here, and
then
especially you get cameras up, and
right.
It's a very different story.
So we're working on a workshop right now. I'm not going to put any dates out there, but where we'll run through an entire production. There'll be a full pre-pro day, with stations of each department that we can not only listen to but interact with each department in what it takes to put together a virtual production. And then the next day we'll be pulling off the shot. So planning that right now. It's a multi-day workshop, and David will be involved. Ace is obviously involved. Got a couple other people signed up for it right now that I think will be pretty exciting when we can announce it. But yeah,
super cool.
Yeah, because you saw once you get your hands on the camera and go through a shot, it changes everything.
It's very
once
different.
I think my shot is the best one.
Lester, actually, I think there's some of Lester's shots in that commercial.
I loved it. I loved it. Yeah, just awesome. The fact that I was able to sit down in the Fisher doll and just kind of.
That's awesome.
It
was so cool.
I mean, the whole experience, it was so positive. The team working together. The G&E. Working with you, onlining and everything, and then our department building the walls in the back, and then bring everything here. I mean, then just art, decoration. I mean, the whole thing. It was just a huge experience for me, and I'm. It's one of the things that I'm gonna start pushing forward in the projects that we're gonna get.
With just production in general is just such a collaborative experience, but adding this whole element just bumps that up a whole nother level, where it's just all of you guys have to be firing on all cylinders in addition to the production and everything else. And it's amazing when everyone comes together to make something amazing like you guys did in that last spot. That was so cool.
Yeah. And I think it was a 5-star experience for everyone involved. Right?
That's great to hear.
Even the people on the team, Lucky Giraffe, they were, Christina and Corey were super happy with the experience. And everything went smoothly. Like we were finishing like before 5 p.m. or something like that. Like before 6 p.m. It was amazing. I mean, it was a long day. Everyone, I think there were like, I don't know, like 25, 30 people here, and everyone was busy. Everyone was doing something. And we had the client here. He was like, God damn, this is amazing. He wasn't expecting something like this.
That's awesome.
You couldn't have done all 4 locations in a day.
Oh, there's no way.
Not at all. Yeah,
we would have had to do 2 and 2.
Well, one of them was not even a location; it was just graphics. So with the product, which was highly reflective and matte finish at the same time.
Yeah.
to have it shine like it did with the graphics playing, and some of the graphics you selected were amazing. It kind of complemented the product and
Another
the
one of my
edges and
favorite
everything.
shots.
So yeah, so I think without that, if you were trying to do that green screen and then add it in post, it would
Oh,
be
yeah.
it would be a
That'd
nightmare.
be tough.
Yeah.
And
yeah, no.
one thing what we boast about at Stray Vista is, you know, obviously you mentioned the team and the experience and all, and we get a lot of tourists who come in and say, like, you know, some other studios they work with, it is always chaotic, and the team sitting on computers, and there is a complete mismatch between that team and the people working on set. So you see a lot of frustration, you see a lot of back and forth, you know, arguments, things like that. And something that we boast about is, like, you will have, as a client, you will never have to go through that. Number one, we have experience on both the sides. That's one thing. And the second thing is, when I sit on that computer, you'll never see me lose my mind, right? Because that goes without saying. When you work with tech and traditional filmmaking, you cannot afford to lose your mind, because both the aspect of this process can go wrong at any time.
Yeah.
You know, like you have everything planned, everything is going fine, but something on the camera breaks,
Yeah.
and it's frustration, or something in the lighting happens, it's frustration. But on the tech side, I would say the only difference between these two worlds is when something happens here, you will know it. When something happens there, you won't know it, right? So it's really important to keep that momentum going, keep that tempo going, even if something's wrong. So, you know, when we were shooting your project, at one instance, the project crashed and you didn't even know, and you still shot that.
Seriously?
Right. So
Like what?
that's something
really? That
that
happened?
you know we have to take care of as a studio, and
Yeah.
that is something that we have in an arsenal, like how to be ninjas when it comes to something like this. So, like, if you see me freaking out in the back, then obviously that kind of
builds
sentiment
stress
goes out
in
in
the
the
team,
set.
Yeah.
So
Never
you
seen
have to
me
be a
freak.
team player at that time.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And
Wow,
going
that's-
off that too, like, as a business owner, obviously I want, you know, people to come to this stage, but virtual production as a whole, we want all of it to look good. So, like, if there were a time where you needed to go to a smaller stage, or for some reason you needed a bigger one, you had to go to LA or something, like, still hit us up to help in any way that we can, because we're at a point in this business where it's all VP reflects all stages. All VP reflects everybody that's into it. So we want it all to look good. And obviously, like, we think that we are capable of making really good looking stuff, but we don't want anybody to be incapable of making really good stuff, whether it's us or another stage. So for me right now, we're not in the business of selling Stray Vista. We're in the business of making VP a useful tool and making sure that people think of it as an option, because it's solving so many problems.
Yeah.
And it's making film, like, reinvigorating for me. Like, it's I don't know, it really, like, sparked a new love for the craft in me, because it's kind of, again, it's going back to, like, the matte painting days, and
Right.
This
and-
makes it fun too.
Yeah.
It's just I've never had a bad day out here. I've had some bad days other places.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
but I don't know if that's a atonement to the crew out here, or that you're just in the AC all day, or
AC helps.
AC helps, or
AC helps,
or
yeah.
how easy it is to not have to move, you know, major company moves. But
Yeah.
I've never had a bad day.
Yeah,
out
I
here.
think the
So cool.
the team that you guys have been able to, you know, get in such a short period of time, it's amazing, because, you know, you've been working with Joe for a while now.
Yeah.
And now the combination of him being in Stray Vista and the chemistry that it's obvious to see between you guys, it's great. I mean, me as a production company, and then for the client to be able to be here and experience that, it's great.
yeah.
Yeah, and I
Well,
think it's funny. I was chatting with another DP. We were, you know, kind of like a little mentorship, grabbing beers talk, and it's funny. He's, I think, like 15 years older than me or something, and listening to him, I haven't really noticed it until that call, but he's talking about this last movie he just shot, and he was naming all the people he worked with, and then he's hitting all these things where I did this with him and we grew, and he's got all these people that worked on this film with him, and all of a sudden it dawns on him that he has grown with those people over a 33-year gap.
Yes.
And while we're not super young as far as film goes, I feel like we're incredibly young in it, and all of a sudden you think like, I'm building this like future.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Joe and I have grown working here in that, and it's funny, you're not even thinking about what the possibilities could be in 10 years.
Yeah.
Or
Did
even
you know Joe shot my feature in Michigan?
no.
He was the DP for the feature.
I knew he was a DP before he was a gaffer.
Yeah.
I knew that.
I've known Joe for years.
Really?
Yeah.
Years, yeah.
That's amazing.
And even like my AC Josh, it's kind of to the point now where I
He's
haven't
great too.
used anybody else because he's an extension of me at this point. Like
Yeah.
it's not that I don't want to give another AC a shot, but
You guys are just on the
for-
same page, you know, and you just know what you need. He knows what you need.
Yeah.
he
and,
makes my job easier. I don't pick anything up. I don't mess with anything. I show up and he knows how I like things set up. And it's to the point now he's like in my brain. I can frame something a certain way and he knows where I want that focus point to be.
And-
It's an, you know.
I think the point of the workshop is to grow that
Yeah.
group of people. You know,
Yeah.
like we want more cinematographers, we want more
Yeah,
ACs,
yeah.
we want more art departments because
Yeah.
there's enough for everybody. And even same with stages. Like we want there to be more virtual production stages,
Yeah.
because as the industry of virtual production grows,
Yeah.
it makes filmmaking easier. It makes it more fun. It makes it easier to tell the story that you actually want to tell. So, like rising tide lifts all boats for sure.
And
Definitely.
we're just scratching the surface.
100%.
What's crazy.
100%.
Yeah,
I-
we really want someone to come up with a project which is meant for virtual production. Not
Yeah.
like the other way where you have a project and you decide to use virtual production. No,
Yeah.
come up with a project thinking about this, and that's when the fun begins.
Yeah,
What is it,
blows your mind.
1884?
I got you, bro.
Well, what was- Did you
Well,
guys watch,
1899.
have you watched the show
Yeah, yeah.
on the boat?
1899.
1899.
And
That for me was the first thing I watched where perfect
Yeah.
virtual production. The
Batman.
whole thing.
I think Batman was a great use
Batman was
too.
cool, but that was
Yeah.
fixes for scenes. 1899 with the whole thing is shot virtually
Yeah.
because they're on a old. I haven't finished. I've watched 2 episodes, but it's the whole ship they're on is at sea this whole time in 1899.
Nah, I want to
So they
watch it.
Built the whole deck of the ship, and they're on the volume the whole time.
On
So
a
the
big
whole thing is shot
table
there.
that turns, so like
Oh, really? So they can
uh,
get
as the
different.
table's
Yeah.
turning, the
Wow.
Unreal Engine's
That's
turning with
Like
it.
Batman did good things. They shot the extension of like the Penguin being in his car with Batman
Yeah.
chasing him, and honestly, I didn't know until I watched a BTS thing that Batman riding the motorcycle was actually a volume shot
No
as
way.
well. Yeah,
Yeah.
go look at it.
Jeez.
Him,
Serious?
they're shooting the shots where they're
That's
shooting
wild.
down or they're shooting up on him. It's all volume work. He's not actually riding it.
Wow.
And then the shot where the Penguin looks in his rearview mirror
Yeah.
and the Batmobile comes out of the flames, that's virtual
No.
wall. And
What?
he's in the car on a thing that's moving it and it's rain going everywhere. But they
Yeah.
shot a lot of stuff for real.
That's
But this
crazy.
1899, the
You know,
whole thing.
It's funny. Every time I'm scrolling in my Apple TV, I see the Batman because I bought the movie. That's the only portion of the movie that I watch every time. Just the car chase.
Oh, it's
I
awesome.
Love it. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the whole hydraulic system with the volume has been a game changer.
Yeah.
You know,
That's amazing.
previously you would have to have green screen in the back, and then the hydraulic would keep moving, and the camera would. It was nightmare for keying process.
Yeah.
But now, with this, you can have realistic rain,
Mm.
especially if you're shooting a chase sequence in rain. You can have practical rain, and because the light is coming from the back, now those raindrops would naturally have that light along with it instead of just a green screen,
Yeah.
right?
That's amazing.
So
So good.
that was another thing with 1899, as I mentioned earlier, like inconvenience is the mother of innovation. In their case, there was no need for innovation because it already existed. But their inconvenience was they were shooting the first season in the middle of COVID in Europe. And the story that they have is pan-Europe. You have people from UK, people from France, Germany, Spain, all embarked on this one ship crossing the Atlantic. So how do you bring all these actors in the middle of COVID to shoot something? So the VP Tech worked in their favor, and then they decided to shoot the way they did.
Did you guys watch House of the Dragon?
No,
Oh
I haven't
yeah,
seen that.
I haven't finished it, but I've
A
watched
lot of
some.
that's VP as well.
Really?
You know
All
what's
the
funny?
bridge
No,
standoff scenes or virtual production.
Well, you
Shooting
guys are
everywhere.
talking about it, and it's something that I always notice. Shooting rain scenes,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
unless you're fully, just playing into the rain and you're letting the actors get drenched. If you ever go watch it, if it's like a talking scene or it leads up to like this big romantic gesture or kiss or something, you'll notice rain's not hitting their faces, right? Because you can't be an actor and sit there and give a whole performance
Sure.
while rain's pouring all over your face. So you could wet the actors, do the set extension of the rain, and then shoot that here in a whole different way than you're running, pipe and shooting rain in the background type of deal, which I don't know if anyone's done. I'd be interested in seeing what that actually looks like.
Yeah.
Doing that here.
I mean, you can rain machine in here as well.
But yes, you wouldn't have to, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because they don't
There's
stand
lots
in
of cheats,
it.
yeah.
It's just like they're wet, and it tricks your mind into that they're in the
Yeah.
rain, but you're still getting that full performance. So I wonder what it would look like shooting it here and actually have no water.
That's crazy. Yeah.
It's limitless. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you guys. Thanks for your
Absolutely.
time.
Yeah, this was
Thanks for
been great.
thanks
Thanks
for
for
having us
having
on,
us
yeah.
out again. This was awesome.
Thanks for joining the podcast. We usually finish each podcast with the guest nominating another guest for future episodes. So I don't know if you guys have someone in mind that that it's probably involved in virtual production.
Yeah, Corey Crumpacker shot one of our very first spec spots that was a commercial, not just for Stray Vista, but for virtual production as a whole. And I think he'd be a really interesting person if you want to piggyback off of this topic, because he put a lot into producing that spot. So
Awesome.
And a great dude in general.
super good dude.
Yeah. It's funny because we already had it in mind and on the list.
Nice.
The idea was to talk about the Wi-Fi film that
Great
he did
film
with-
too.
Yeah, the one he did with Mike.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. We watched that a little while ago.
Yeah.
That was
Great
great.
film.
It is
Yeah, it
good.
looked awesome.
It's very good.
Yeah. Ace, do you want to nominate someone?
He already nominated Corey, so I would say
Me.
I would say maybe you can bring someone like other Corey or Wes from the practical art department to pick their brains, to have them talk about the
How
experience
they
and
go about it.
yeah.
right and some of the some of the preparation that they would have to go through when doing this.
Yeah. West Phil or Dakota or
So
Yeah.
Phil Rios is also a good
Yeah.
production design, and he was a part of that production. So if you bring in Corey, then I say you also bring Phil along with him
Cool,
to talk
that'd
about
be-
their experience with
That'd
that.
be awesome.
Right.
Good call.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a good little duo.
Because practical art is equally important, and
Oh, yeah,
we don't
definitely.
want production to ignore that aspect and that part of the workflow.
yeah, and Lucky Draft did a great job too.
Yeah.
On your shoot.
Oh,
So
yeah.
but
I
the
love
other
them,
Corey I said was Lucky Giraffe.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. Yeah. There are two Corys. All right, guys. Thank you
Awesome,
very
guys.
much.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming out. Appreciate y'all's
Absolutely.
time
Thanks
on
for
a
having us
Friday.
on,
So
for real.
yeah,
Yeah.
appreciate y'all.
And
Pleasure.
to the audience listening or watching, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Spotify. See you in the next one.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Cheers.